Meteorologist John Burchfield here with the first edition of the Climate Friday newsletter of the month of October. And now that we are in the heart of the fall season, you may be seeing some of those leaves change color. Now, with the prevailing drought conditions over the last month or so, you may be wondering, will the drought play a role in the fall foliage? And will we still see some vibrant fall colors? We're going to answer those questions and talk about the impacts of precipitation on cloud cover, as well as overnight temperatures on the fall foliage and what you can expect for our autumn colors this season. If you're not already subscribed, WTOL.com/email is the place to subscribe to that Climate Friday newsletter. So let's talk impacts of the severe drought and how it may affect our fall foliage this season. Even though many areas in northwest Ohio and southeastern Michigan did receive rainfall within the past 7 days, for much of northwest Ohio, including the Toledo metro, severe drought conditions have prevailed over the last week. Due to the ongoing late summer drought, especially during the month of September, that drought could hamper the fall colors and cause some changes to what we normally anticipate for the autumn foliage season. So we're first of all going to talk drought, and then we'll get into the details of the impacts that it may have on fall foliage. Unfortunately, much of the Maumee River corridor and north and west of the Maumee River did not see a ton of rainfall over the last week. Areas south did get some rainfall, and one of the things that I have noticed with the drought monitor is that far east of Toledo and Erie and Huron counties, we're seeing some improvements due to recent rainfall. Southern Michigan also did get a bit of rain, but from Toledo back towards Fulton, Williams, Defiance, and Henry counties, those locations are still in dire need of that rainfall. There has been some improvement far to the south and east of Toledo, from Sandusky back towards Fremont, Tiffin, and Norwalk, and there's actually parts of Erie and Huron County that are no longer under any sort of drought and not even considered to be abnormally dry. Now, for Lucas County and the Toledo metro, spanning all the way back towards Wauseon, Napoleon, and Defiance, along Route 24 towards Antwerp and Fort Wayne, that corridor is still under a severe drought, and that has remained unchanged, including Lucas County. And that orange color that you see indicates that the entirety of Lucas County, as well as parts of northern Wood County, still remain under a severe drought. So in terms of rainfall by the numbers, we have yet to receive a single inch of rain since the start of September, which is when meteorological fall begins. That puts us considerably below average in the rainfall department. In fact, we are now approaching 2.5 inches below average in terms of rainfall. So let's talk about the impacts that the weather has on the fall colors, starting things off with summer weather, because summer and fall weather each play a unique role in how vibrant and how long-lasting the autumn foliage is. Now, frequent summer rainfall is generally beneficial for the fall foliage season. Typically, when we get a wetter summer, the leaves change a bit later on in the fall season, and they also fall off later, so that can mean a more prolonged autumn foliage season. What that would mean for us is that late October, even into early November, will provide a nice longer window of beautiful fall foliage, and that is often associated with more vibrant color. Of course, you don't want flooding rains, but more frequent summer rainfall is generally conducive to a bit of a later season and a more vibrant and long-lasting season. Now, drought can generally have an adverse effect on the fall foliage. What that does is the corollary to what a wet summer does. It typically causes some of those leaves to change color earlier, and it really stresses out and imposes stress upon those trees. What that does is it decreases or shortens the window of fall colors, and unfortunately, that can sometimes mean less vibrant color and a shorter window of fall colors. We do typically see the colors change a little bit sooner, and the leaves also do fall off faster. So in addition to the long-term weather trends, shorter-term storm systems can also have an impact. When you get winds and storms, those can physically remove leaves from the trees, and sometimes that does sap away from the vibrancy of the fall colors, because leaves that are not quite even changed can be falling off the trees. And that is especially true after the trees have been stressed for the last month with drought conditions. That often makes for a less vibrant year of foliage when you get frequent systems that bring strong winds as well as heavier thunderstorms. So that's the impact of summer weather. What about when when fall rolls around? Well, once fall does start to begin, especially during October, you actually want cooler nights. Warm nights can cause or be associated with duller colors in the fall foliage. When you get those cool and crisp nights with temperatures in the 40s to even the 50s, that enhances the color and it really starts to bring out some of those colorful and vibrant pigments. The cool nights are the trigger that cause those trees to stop making the green pigment chlorophyll, and that enables some of those bright reds, orange, purples, yellows to really shine through. So the cool nights in the forecast actually are looking favorable. If you stay tuned to that WTOL 11 weather forecast, you will see a lot of night times in the 40s. Warmer nights tend to produce duller color, especially over a longer duration of time. So what about precipitation? We do need some rainfall, not too much. You don't want flooding rains or any saturation or ponding of water. However, some rainfall is needed. When the trees are stressed, that often leads to those leaves falling off a bit sooner, as well as a shorter duration of the fall foliage and oftentimes a less vibrant leaf peeping season. And that is the scenario that we find ourselves in this year with drought conditions for the entirety of September. So in terms of individual pigments, I talked about those overnight low temperatures, especially those cool, crisp nights. The red pigment, that is known as anthocyanin, and that is one of the most coveted colors of the leaves for those who enjoy looking at fall colors. The red leaves are certainly beautiful and they're a little bit harder to come by. Now, when you get cool and sunny autumn days, especially those cool and crisp nights, the colors can be more vibrant. If it's too hot or too rainy in the fall, you tend to see a little bit less in the way of red. So we do have a favorable forecast, at least heading through mid-October. There are going to be some cooler days in that forecast with highs in the 60s, as well as sunny days with crisp nights. So fingers crossed that is favorable towards seeing those reds and bringing out the anthocyanin pigments that are associated with the reds. Now, autumn weather still continues to play a role through the month of October. Drought and heat generally not good for the fall foliage, and hot summers, as I mentioned, cause an earlier transition of those colors, and oftentimes that means the leaves end up falling off by the start of November. Storms and wind can also lead to a sooner or more premature shedding of those leaves. Later colors, when you get warm fall nights, that tends to prolong the change of the leaves. Those warm fall nights essentially trick the trees into thinking that it's still summertime. So we do have some cooler nights in the forecast, even after relatively warm weather throughout the month of September. October weather still does play a role in it, and the warmer the October, the later the transition to those fall colors. It's those cooler nights that signal the shift in fall foliage. So Ohio, Michigan, and much of the Midwest could be impacted by the drought conditions. Fall foliage is a significant business, especially in terms of tourism, and especially Michigan. A lot of folks do drive north to see the autumn colors. New England is also another destination, and many areas out in the Rockies out west do see a lot of tourism. Across the country, it is estimated that this is a $30 billion industry, the fall foliage tourism. So there could potentially be local impacts, especially to Michigan, where people do drive to enjoy those fall colors if it's not quite as vibrant of a year. So when do we normally see the change in fall colors? Well, across northern Ohio, it's typically mid-October that we start to arrive at or reach the peak of fall foliage, from about the 14th or the second week through the 21st or the third week of October. In central Ohio, and that can potentially include areas like Mansfield down towards Columbus, it's just a couple of days later, ranging from about the 17th through the 24th. And of course, there is a lot of year-to-year variation based on the weather pattern. Down into southern Ohio, it is oftentimes not until about Halloween and even early November that the peak of fall colors arrives. Now, of course, due to the drought that we've had, that could potentially cause this to be a little bit earlier, and it could also shrink the window or make it a little bit more brief. However, these cooler nights could trigger some nice colors within the next couple of weeks. In summary, temperatures, sunshine, and rainfall all play a role, and October weather conditions will still play a role. So the drought is not necessarily the only factor that's going to play a role in our fall colors. The upcoming temperatures through October, as well as the amount of sun we get in rainfall, are going to play a role. Sunny days are helpful. You do want those sunny days and clear, crisp nights. You don't want it to be too dry or too wet. Of course, it has been too dry over the summer season, and it is likely that through the first 2 weeks of October, it is going to be a very, very dry weather pattern. When you get early frost and freeze into the month of October, that can hurt the fall colors, and it can also cause some of those leaves to fall off or die before they've fully transitioned and changed colors. Drought conditions impose stress on trees, and that can cause the leaves to fall off sooner than they may and also shrink or abbreviate the window of fall colors. So long story short, some of the signs and some of the weather conditions throughout the month of September, not exactly favorable for fall fanatics and leaf peepers. However, there is still hope with some cooler and crisp nights in the next week that we will start to see the change in fall foliage, and within the next week you are really going to start to notice a difference. If you're not already subscribed to that Climate Friday newsletter, we'll have updates throughout the autumn season and what you can expect for the fall colors, and stay tuned to that WTOL 11 weather forecast.